Hey guys, welcome to the Life's Worth Living podcast. I'm your host, John Gossett, and we're back for another week, another episode. We want to give a big shout out tonight to GTM Builders. GTM Builders is the sponsor of this podcast. They allow us to record in their beautiful model home here in Tooele. And so if you're thinking about building a new home, check them out at gtmbuilders.com or visit one of their model homes in the Tooele Valley. We really appreciate them, and they build a beautiful home. Tonight's episode is brought to you by A. Warner Homes Real Estate. If you're in the market thinking about buying or selling, interest rates are really low, reach out to them. Give them a call at 801-867-5078. That is A. Warner Homes Real Estate, and they'll take care of you. So, we appreciate you guys coming back week after week to hear the messages that we're sharing on this podcast. I feel really grateful every week that I'm able to bring new guests to you, friends of mine, people that I respect and work with. And tonight I am very honored to have a good friend of mine, Tadd Mckay. Tadd is going to share his story. And tonight's story is going to be a little different than we've heard maybe from the other episodes. Tadd is a suicide attempt survivor. And we're not going to get very graphic tonight. We're going to try to keep the message on point because we've got a great message that needs to be shared and one that needs to be heard. If you feel that anything is setting you off, please feel free to discontinue watching it or listening to it. But I believe the message needs to be heard tonight. And so we're going to go ahead and roll with it. So, Tadd, thanks for coming tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No, I really appreciate it. So I kind of want to introduce you to all the listeners. Let's back up and tell us where you were born and raised, a little bit about you and your family.
Well, I was born in Murray in 1965, and I have lived all over in Utah. And when I say that, I mean, when I was 19 and got married, because that's what you do in Utah, right? I moved out, and that was my 21st move. So I moved around a lot. That's kind of what the family did. Anywhere from Santaquin, Payson, Bountiful, Duchesne, and this is the furthest west I've ever lived in Tooele. Yeah. So I had a decent familyhood. You know, my kids, my mom and dad did the best they could. My dad worked all the time, sometimes 2 jobs to support us. I had 3 younger brothers, and life was good. My one brother and I are really into hunting and fishing, and the other 2 have got their own thing going on. One's kind of an artsy guy. He's written a couple of books. The other one is really into aquariums and stuff like that. So basically just your average family,
All boys?
Yeah, all boys.
Nice.
We all get along well. There's no trauma that you might think about from some people. Their childhood is a lot different than mine in that, I had a good upbringing, good family, good roots. Grandparents lived close, all that type of thing.
So everybody's here locally in Utah. Mm-hmm. Nice. Mm-hmm. And that's good to have.
It is. It's really nice. We get together as often as we can. With this COVID stuff, we can't. But
yeah, COVID has screwed up a lot of stuff.
Someone asked me a while ago, "What has COVID done to you? How has it affected you?" And this was months ago, maybe March, April, May, and it hasn't. But now, I was trying to get back to school. I had to take classes online. It was miserable. A lot of different things just affected me that way. I got to wear a mask if I go to 7-Eleven or to Walmart. It's a completely different world than we're used to.
Yeah, it's turned the world upside down for sure this year, and I don't even think we're beginning to see the effects of what it's really. We're all worried about actually catching the virus, but I think the effects go far beyond the virus for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the virus I don't want to downplay it, but I'm more worried about what it's going to do to the rest of the community.
Yeah.
As opposed to my catching the virus.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true. And you know, you and I had visited before, and we were talking, you're seeing everything kind of up, whether it's, suicide attempts, we're seeing domestic violence, sexual, physical abuse. Things, everybody's kind of amped up because we're all kind of stuck
Anything
at
that
home.
can be hidden behind closed doors is involved through all of this. And it's just, and that's something that I don't know how we get past.
I don't either.
You know?
I think it's something that we, as human beings, we all crave connection. We like to get together with people. We like to have that connection and be able to visit. And so that's the toughest thing for me personally with COVID is just feeling like I'm all by myself, like we're not out there doing what we did prior. So it's kind of frustrating.
It is. And I'm a touchy-feely guy, right?
Yeah.
So I like to hug. And we were at a gathering a while ago. Everyone's, fist bumping or, whatever. No one's hugging. And my buddy came up and gave me a hug. And as corny as it might sound, it was the first hug I've had in a long time. And that social connection that we don't have anymore is causing a lot of problems. For me it is, in that I like to be surrounded by people I love and care about. And when you can't have that, your world kind of goes crazy.
Yeah. And see, I had that kind of a similar experience to that. I was at Walmart and I saw somebody I really look up to and admire. And I went over and gave the guy a hug. And I realized after I kind of got halfway around him that, I'm not supposed to do this.
Right.
And he kind of backed up a little bit. And I thought, oh, man, I blew that. I shouldn't have done it. But it's tough when you're kind of that guy that, I'm affectionate in the fact that, I enjoy my friends. And so it is a tough thing. Definitely tough for me.
These are good, strong handshakes that we can't do anymore,
That's the truth. I'm more scared about losing that than I am about the virus.
Exactly.
And that's a tough deal for me. So you grew up, lived all around Utah. What have you done for a living as an adult?
Once I got married, I worked at where was I working the first time? I was working for a place called Super Shops. It was a high-performance auto parts store. And I sold all of those parts. And so I like to work on cars and stuff like that. So I did a little bit of that. My family has been in the meat industry, so I did a lot of in that field. I was delivering meats for a couple of different places. Then I realized that because of a car accident I was in years ago, my body just wasn't quite working how I wanted to with all that physical labor. So I went to school, and I have an associate's degree in computer-aided drafting.
Nice.
So I did that for a number of years, and then ever since all of this, things have been upside down, and now I'm going back to school because that's a real passion of mine. I like to draft. I like the civil engineering area where I'm, laying out subdivision or, I had a lot of experience with surveying, so I'd take all of that information back to being surveyed, put that into the computer and make a topographical map, stuff like that. So I still have all of that knowledge, but it's all new software.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting back into that.
Kind of get the refresher on it. I always enjoyed drafting. That was one of my favorite classes in high school.
Yeah.
And stuff. I always thought, someday I'll be an architect. And, life's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I didn't. High school for me was nothing but playtime.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there at all for the right reason. Well, at all for the right reason.
Me both.
I remember thinking, algebra, what do I want that for? But in my field, I use all kinds of stuff like that, trigonometry all day long. And so, like you say, it is weird how you end up. I remember saying in my argument, who cares what X is?
Yeah.
As far as algebra is concerned. But things just changed. And for me, when I got older, it became more valuable to what I needed to know, I wanted to know. So that's when it became easy to learn.
Mm-hmm. When I got into algebra, I kept thinking I should get an English credit. They're putting letters in my math. So
there's that, yeah.
It should count for 2 classes.
Right.
Well, and so you got married.
Yeah, so I got married young and had 2 wonderful children. They're both married now and have babies of their own. I have 5 grandchildren.
Awesome.
And my daughter, she lives in Price, and my son lives in Linden. So that's a huge part of my life. Who doesn't love their kids?
Yeah. Grandkids are a lot funner.
Yeah, you're right. So I'm really looking forward to spending a lot more time with them. And, that's another area that this COVID has affected me. I want to go and see and hang out with my daughter. I'm never real cautious about that type of thing, once all was done, you come down, we can hang out, We even had a birthday party for my mom on the front lawn.
Serious?
Yeah. That was weird. Kind of fun, but weird.
Yeah, it is. And you get the older population, you have to be really careful.
Well, that's why we did that for her,
And I don't think people are realizing how hard that is on people our parents' age, because they're lonely anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And now having, everybody staying away, I think that even makes it harder.
It must. I don't know how it couldn't.
I live 2 doors away from my mother, so I see her every day, but she's stuck with me.
Right.
But because we take care of her. But yeah, I can only imagine, because the elderly population, they feel isolated anyway.
Right.
So again, another group that's just amped up
exactly.
because of COVID.
All of that, any of our emotional connections we have with each other has really diminished because we don't have that anymore.
Yeah. 100%.
And we're herd animals,
Yeah.
We're so social that's what we need, And so when that's gone, it's no wonder all of the problems going on inside the doors are amped up, and suicide is amped up, and drug abuse, and all of that is amped up.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense.
Totally does. So, married, 2 kids, 5 grandkids.
Right.
So let's back up and tell your story, and lay it out there, and don't be afraid to tell us, what led to it and everything.
Okay.
Kind of lead us into it, and let's talk about it.
Okay. Well, so when I was about 35 years old, I had drank throughout my life. Had some problems with it, never a DUI or anything else. I was a binge drinker, meaning that I would not drink for quite a while and then just get tore up. And so that was the extent of my alcohol use. And when that will play into it more. But when I was 35, I don't know what was going on with my head, but I started having what I've since learned were panic attacks. And I thought I was losing my mind, because I was getting so amped up. My blood pressure was going crazy. I started hallucinating to a degree. I started thinking that the whole world was out to get me, and I thought I lost my mind. And through all of that, my alcohol consumption was, through the roof. And I started to find something outside of me to make myself feel better. And so I ended up getting a divorce, left my children, got remarried. It was nothing but a band-aid for either one of us. And there was something missing on the inside, and I had no idea what it was. And so after my second divorce, things were really really good and bad, like you talked about. You know, I had a great job, making really good money, more than I ever had before. I had a really nice truck, 2-year-old truck. I had my kids with me every weekend. We were fishing. We were playing ball because we were really big into baseball. That's kind of what we did. But there was still that hole going on. And I don't know. You know, I was drinking a lot more than I had been before because there wasn't anyone to hold me back anymore, you know. And so I would go out, I was saying, you know, as much, all the money I could on booze and more than I should, and drinking. And one morning, you know, and I was sober when this happened, you know, I hadn't drank for 3 or 4 days at the time, and I woke up at 3 o'clock on Sunday morning, February 22nd, and in '99, and all I could hear was, "You have to die." And it wasn't like you and I were talking, but in my head, that's all I could hear was I had to die. And I reached for a gun, and I shot, and that didn't do the trick, so I got up and tried again, and shot. And at that point, I passed out. And my grandfather had been dead at the time for about 3 or 4 years. And, you know, believe this or not, this is what I wholeheartedly believe. My grandfather yelled at me and said, "Get the hell up and dial 911. You've got 2 kids to raise." You know, and that's just how he would talk to me if he was here. And again, he had been dead for a couple of years. So I you know, I woke up, came to, whatever, and crawled over to the phone, dialed 911, and here we are. You know, I've had seriously over 70 operations on my face, bone grafts here, there, all kinds of stuff, trying to keep me alive. And so once all of that was done, and I got to where I had my trachea out, I could talk again, and I had my feeding tube out, so I didn't have to, you know, put everything into my feeding tube. I went right back to drinking like I had before, and I ended up with 3 DUIs in 2.5 months, and thought, well, there might be some problem going on. My family thought, because I really didn't think there was much of a problem going on, but they were convinced that there was, and they were right. And so I went into rehab, and that's kind of what started my recovery process. I ended up with, in that time, from that on, October 28th, I had, in 2000, I got 8 years after that. So I had 8 years sober in, you know, no drugs, no alcohol for 8 years. And I realized now, looking back, and I did that through a 12-step program, and I realized back then, looking back, that I was abstinent. I stopped getting loaded, but I didn't do anything about changing the inside, which what I believe needs to happen to me to not want to get loaded anymore. Something on the inside starts to happen, you know.
Otherwise, you continue to mask
right
what's going on inside.
Because I need to fill that hole, and I'm filling that hole with anything I can outside, you know. And then in 2008, I relapsed, got loaded again, and I have been really struggling ever since. You know, I've had a year here and a year there. I think maybe 18 months, possibly 2 years, I don't remember. And I, you know, I'm still actively involved in my life and my recovery through a 12-step program. And, you know, it's still something that I struggle with.
Yeah.
You know, I don't struggle with wanting to get loaded every day anymore, but I struggle with downtime. You know, how do I fill my downtime with something positive? Because for me, being bored is the enemy. And if I'm bored, I'm, you know, a half a minute away from getting in trouble.
Well, I think that's a kind of a common theme on people that are working on recovery because, man, downtime will just take you down roads where you just don't need to be. And it doesn't matter what the addiction is, whether it's alcohol or cigarettes or, pornography, whatever the addiction of choice is, man, you have some downtime and,
Well, absolutely. And that's another thing I wanted to mention, too, is, sure, it was drugs and alcohol were at the forefront, but hidden behind all of that, cigarettes, chewing tobacco. And like you said, porn, sex, money, work, anything to make myself feel differently than I'm feeling right then at that time.
Yeah.
And, it's like they say, in moderation, everything is okay, but I don't know anything about moderation.
Well, and I hear you because so many of us have that addictive personality.
Yeah, for me, more is better. Yeah. Always. I don't care what it is, and that's just the wrong, that's not healthy.
Yeah.
I'll sit down, I'll eat a big old plate of burrito,
Yeah.
I don't have to have all of it, but man, I'm going to eat it.
That's me with ice cream.
Yeah, I'm all about Mexican food, man. Yeah. If it's hot, I'm in. And I don't have to eat 8 pounds of it,
Yeah.
But I do. And that's just part of that thing, I get obsessed about whatever I'm doing, whether, fishing. Oh, man, I can't believe how much money I spent on fishing, And don't get me wrong, it's a lot of fun, and I will continue to do it. But, I was talking with Buddy again the other day about my money and where it goes so quickly, and a lot of it is impulse.
Yeah.
And I'll go and buy it. Gotta have this, gotta have that, gotta have it, and I'll get back to my tackle box. I've got 17 of them already. So that's kind of how my head works. Anything at that moment to make myself feel better. And I think that's the key for a lot of people in recovery is to find something that isn't so detrimental. A lot of folks work out, and workout just really gets into it, or they ride a bike, or they ride a horse, or they fish, or whatever, some healthy avenue to substitute.
Yeah.
It talks about that in one of the books that, have you found a healthy substitute, or do you have a substitute? Well, yeah, there is. And that's what I am learning how to do, is to find that.
Well, tell me, so this will kind of back us up a little bit, but talking about impulsivity, do you think that kind of played into your attempt?
Oh, absolutely.
Because, we see that in teens, and teens, they seem to be a little bit more impulsive. I'm like you. You're describing me and what you're saying 100%. I'm that exact way as far as, bigger's better, more's better. And like I said, that's me to a T. So I just was curious if, the panic attack happened, had you taken a minute and stepped away from that situation?
Well, from what I know about panic attacks, when I'm in one, the only thing that helps is sleep. It never calms down until I've had, a couple of hours sleep, or I don't know, I haven't learned how to stop it.
Yeah.
And I believe wholeheartedly. Like I said, I had that idea. Man, let's go.
Yeah.
So I got this here, I got that there, let's go.
Yeah.
And had it not been for a panic attack like that, I don't know if I would have. But I do know that how I was living played into my vulnerability to a panic attack.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't eating right. I wasn't sleeping right. I was drinking way too much. I was, I get home from work, and the first thing I do is go to the bar or go anywhere, to feel less lonely and feel less like Well, that's it. To feel less lonely. I wanted to get out there and take care of that hole inside with anything I can get a hold of.
Yeah.
And that played into my vulnerability to like I said, of having a panic attack. And because of my behavior like that, I'm in, let's go. Yeah.
So tell me this. So we kind of went through the attempt fairly quickly, and there were a couple of questions I do have. 70 surgeries.
Yes.
Over what time period? I mean, how long did that last?
I had my last operation 2013, I believe.
So over a 14-year period.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a ton.
Well, and for the first year plus, I was living at my parents' house because, I was having an operation 1 month, or thereabouts.
Yeah. So I do a little bit and then have to come back and do a little more and do a little more.
And then there were massive infections going on,
Yeah.
And my doctors, they did a great job keeping me alive, and there's only one operation I've had that was not solely cosmetic, but it was when they put this, they made that a little bit smaller than it was. So I don't know how they did that, but they did, liposuction or whatever it is, I have no idea. But it's been a challenge, to have all those operations, to look the way I look, to talk the way I talk. But that does play a part in how addiction has come so strongly in me since then.
Yeah.
Because as well as I handle it now comparatively to when I did it before, there are still times when, crap, this has been 20 years and someone, was eyeballing me the other day and couldn't stop staring, and so that will always bother me a little bit.
Yeah.
Not when a child does it, but when it's a grown person. It's like, come on, man, I know you learn better than that.
Yeah.
Well,
I remember when we met, because I think you and I met at City Hall when I was teaching
that
QPR.
class, right.
And you came up to me after the class, waited till the end of the class and came up to me and shared your story. And I can imagine how difficult that 20 years has been. I mean, I didn't know 70 surgeries, but I mean, holy cow.
Right.
There's a lot to that. How did your family react with the news?
Oh man, it must have been just horrible. So like I said, I have 3 brothers, and my younger one's just under me. He and I were really close. We had the same type of personality. We were real, passionate about a lot of different things that we share. Hunting, fishing, stuff like that. And some of our friends that said that when he heard, he went completely white as a ghost. And I was so fouled up in the hospital that, and the ER, that my head was just swollen. It's huge. And Jeff, he didn't recognize me, and he wouldn't believe it, until he finally came to believe it. Oh, that is him, and it really fouled him up, My mom still won't say, she refers to it as an accident, because I think it emotionally bothers her and doesn't want to say that my son killed himself or tried killing himself, or a sore spot for her possibly. Well, I'm sure it is. But it, absolutely played a toll on everyone. I mean, I had been out of the house since I was 19. Now I'm 35, 6 years old, and I'm back at home and having all those operations, and they're having to take care of me. Nurses are coming in. It's just, is life-altering for everyone,
Yeah.
you know.
And your mom may have been doing that as kind of a way to protect you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, now you say that makes perfect sense. Yeah, she didn't want to think that, you know, my son tried killing himself.
Yeah.
You know, I'll say a lot, when I refer to it, you know, before I try to blow my head off, you know, and I'm not trying to be funny or anything else, but that's just a quick way for me to say it, you know, because I don't like to say, oh, that night I tried killing myself or whatever. It's just quicker for me to say it like that.
Yeah.
But I can absolutely, you know, my brothers were all really supportive of me, and not, I want to say more so than they were, but it's more evident because of all that was going on.
Yeah.
You know, you could feel the love that they had for me, and that's pretty powerful.
And can you imagine going through that without them?
That would have been horrible,
Yeah.
you know. No, I can't. Because knowing that I still had the family support and that I still had some love going on, you know, I remember we were in the hospital. I was one of the hospitals I was at, one of the hospital stays. It was a long-term facility because it was going to take me several months to recoup from this one operation that I had had. And I had aunts, uncles, and cousins, and my family all show up. And so there were like 15, 20 people in my hospital room. And the nurses and nursing staff commented that they had never seen so many people visiting one person at a time. You know, and
Did you just tell them you were popular?
I just said, man, I got a great family.
Yeah.
You know, and
Hands down.
yeah. You know, I had cousins who were out of state visiting, and they came to see me in that trip. You know, so that meant a lot.
Yeah, that's a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And to have that love and support and know that, I mean, because at that point in time, you needed to know that somebody had your back.
Well, and that's what I say about having such a wonderful family, because I have.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a great family and a great childhood. You know, what kid doesn't have a miserable childhood at times, you know?
Yeah.
But
We've all been in trouble.
yeah, absolutely. You know, but that's something that I didn't have to struggle with, thank God.
Yeah. So when did the addiction start for you? Like, what age did you first kind of start experimenting?
I was 14 when I had my
14.
first beer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And 14, 15 in that area. And it was heaven. It was, at that moment, I realized that it made me better. It made me happier, it made me stronger, it made me faster, it made me funnier, it made everything, you know? And so then it became every chance I got, I was going to get loaded. You know, I still worked, I still was responsible that way, but as soon as I could, I'm getting, I'm going to start drinking.
You know, and I hear that a lot from people that'll say, kind of an introvert or something, and then when I'd have that drink, it loosened me up, and people couldn't believe the things I was doing, and it kind of gives you I don't know, I wouldn't say, it just kind of gives you another identity.
Well, yeah, it lowers all those inhibitions, and so now you can let loose.
Yeah.
And I'm not an introvert by any means, but like I said, it amplified everything.
Yeah.
To me.
And again, it was to mask what you didn't want
known
or to be, and things like that. So in the 20 years since the attempt, you've had kind of some time, especially through that surgery phase, you had some time to kind of self-reflect and kind of be able to look on the inside and try to figure out
where and when, And in doing that, I realized that I don't know why. I think that I'm just wired differently than some. that there was always something missing. I didn't quite feel right. You know, as much love as I had or as much acceptance as I had, I always felt like it wasn't enough, or they were kidding. They weren't really serious about it because I didn't feel lovable or I didn't feel accepted on the inside. And so as soon as I found a substance, whatever that was, then that took those feelings away. And then I would cover that up. You know, it's like they say, you know, I got a God-sized hole in my soul. And that's a pretty cool way of putting it, you know, because the only thing that can take care of any of that, as far as I'm concerned, is God.
Yeah.
You know, I have to let him in to fix it because I can't. You know, because when I was running the show, I got here.
Yeah.
You know, I got loaded. And so that's a big part of my life, too, you know, is that through all of my addiction and the places that it took me, places I didn't think I would ever go, I found God. And don't get me wrong, I still have struggled with relapses since I've had that spiritual experience with my God. But I know I'm not doing it alone.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that he is helping me, you know. And there it is.
Well, and I think if we're laying it out there, if he hadn't been there for you, you wouldn't be here today.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine? And again, not to keep taking us back, but you survived not one, but 2 gunshots to the head. That's, to most people, unthinkable, right? And you have this voice of your grandpa come to you. You've had miracles all the way along, right? But there's definitely something still left for you to do.
Right, and he knows what that is.
Yeah.
And I hope I don't know, because then, okay, well, that's it. Now what?
Yeah, exactly. Check. And you're done.
Okay, now what?
But seriously, I mean, there's a reason why you're here.
Yeah, I remember one, so they took muscle from my stomach and put it in my face in one operation. And you know how you wake up in the morning, you've got phlegm going on, or drool, or whatever else. I did that and my guts exploded. That patch that they put in, just whatever. And so now I have all this in my stomach, the bile and everything else going through my whole system, and I'm dying. And they sent me to another hospital, and when I woke up, the doctor looked at me and said, "I don't know why you're alive." You know, and so to hear things like that,
Oh yeah.
you know, and here's a guy that knows what he's doing.
This is what he does.
Yeah, and he doesn't know how I survived what I survived. So there's definitely been some, some higher power, God working in my life. You know.
Well, and do you think? Again, I'm asking these things not knowing, but I mean, do you think, had you not gone through what you went through in 1999, you think you would have been able to find that 8 years of sobriety? Or do you think that helped with it?
No, I think that it helped me get to a point where there was enough misery that I needed to do something different to change.
Yeah.
The DUIs and everything else, and I remember I wasn't a drug addict, is what I thought in my head, right? And as I look back, I had a feeding tube in. I talked about that earlier. I would save up the medication that I was taking, and I would take it as prescribed, meaning that I would play in the game, as for what the bottle said, but I didn't need them, so I'd hang on to them, and then I would put it into my feeding tube. And so, again, that's just my addictive personality, doing things that I didn't need to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, and so it got me to a point where something's not right. I got to do some different to change. And then I was able to find some recovery, 8 years of it. You know, at least, well, abstinence.
Yeah.
You know, that's what has to happen for me. And most of the people I know in recovery, they have to get beat up enough to want to change.
Kind of hit that rock bottom.
Mm-hmm. And I've got lots of rock bottoms, you know. I have, you know. One of my all-time favorite sayings, not only who said it, but we will change when the fear of change becomes less than the pain of staying the same.
Yeah.
And that's so true, because once I get miserable enough, then I'm not going to be so afraid of what's out there and what needs to get done. I'm willing to look at it and anything to stop feeling how I'm feeling.
Yeah. So after that 8 years, you've had some periods of sobriety and some relapses, and I think that's common. I mean, recovery is kind of an ongoing thing. It's not something that just, for most, that just hits you and you're good to go. It's a struggle.
Right. Well, absolutely. I mean, this is a lifelong deal in that I have to be diligent in what I'm doing to maintain my sobriety. You know, because I believe that for me, stopping is the easy part, but not starting again is the challenge, you know.
I was going to say, I think that's, in the 12-step program, that's my favorite steps, that change of heart. It's easy to have the change of heart, but it's hard to keep that change of heart always going so that
Right, and that's where, you know, the first 8 to 9 are taking care of you, and up to that point where you're powerless and you're making amends.
Yeah.
And then 10, 11, 12, you know, I've heard them called maintenance
steps,
where I'm taking care of what I need to take care of right now and continue to share the message so that I can continue to be in recovery.
Yeah. And then that 12-step, giving back, serving others, and making sure that's the clincher. Once you're to that point, you know.
Well, and the value of that is, well, there's a line in Narcotics Anonymous that says that the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. No one can understand what it's like to be an addict or an alcoholic. And to me, they're the same guy, right? There's not, it's a substance that we're using. But, you know, I can talk to my mom all day long, and she is a wonderful, loving, caring person and wants nothing but the best for me, like a lot of mothers do. But she doesn't understand, and has said several times, Dad, I don't understand why you continue to do this. You've got 2 lovely children. You just want nothing but you. And all you're doing is getting loaded. But a person in recovery knows what it's like, that at all costs, I'm going to get loaded. And that drive, that passion, if you will, to do that, regardless of the consequences.
Yeah.
You know, because
they walked it.
Right.
They know.
When I have that in my head, that's what I'm going to do, that's where the insanity comes in, you know. And so to talk to someone who's been in recovery and has been in that situation, they get it.
Yeah.
And you know they get it, and so you can, you know, talk that way. But it's like talking, it's like someone trying to tell me how not to get high that has never been high or never used. You know, tell me how to live without using, but they've never used. It doesn't hold a lot of weight.
Yeah. And I can totally see that. I can see that, you know, you got to have somebody that's walked that similar path so that you can know that they get it, you know. And so as you've been going through these years of recovery, have you been able to kind of pick up on maybe things that set you off, or kind of warning signs, road signs telling you, oh, it's coming, you know, this is coming up, and if I'm not careful, I'm going to fall back into the trap?
Yeah. And again, it starts out with being bored, lonely, and I've heard halt, hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. Any one of those things, or all of them together, can cause me some problems, and that's where I get going. I'm lonely and I'm bored, and next thing you know, man, things are awesome.
Yeah.
I'm right there. I'm looking for something to make myself feel better. And I have a dog now, and it's just, she is an absolute lifesaver.
Yeah.
Because that helps me stay more focused, on something that a living soul relying on me, that if I get loaded, then I can't have her, and she depends on me. And for years, I wouldn't have a dog or an aquarium, because I like both those things. But I wouldn't have them because I didn't feel stable enough, and I do now.
And that feels good to be in a spot where you know that...
I can buy her food.
Yeah.
I can take her to the vet. Things like that. And so, get a dog.
Yeah.
And also, too, that's a great way to not feel so lonely.
Yeah, that companionship.
Yeah, it gets me out of the house. Because if I get stuck in my funk, and then I want to do nothing but sit down and watch television or eat or anything else, the dog's got to go outside,
And there's something to be said about a dog. I make jokes with my kids and my wife to say, there's only one person I know that's excited when I hit that door.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Always excited.
And it doesn't matter if you've failed or messed up, or that love from a pet is unconditional.
Well, it's just like a little child.
Yeah.
I remember some of my best days ever was when I would come home and my children were there and young and just wanted nothing but hugs and loves.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that you live for.
It is.
Yeah, that's the stuff that you live for. To have, your babies wanting to hang out with you.
Yeah.
And I still, when I pray, they're grown people, right? They're grown-ups, but I call them my babies. Whenever I pray and pray with them, for them, whatever, I thank God for my babies.
Yeah. And they're always going to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's amazing how quickly time goes, but yet when you look at them, they're still...
Oh, I have a couple pictures in my head that when my son was, brand new from the hospital, right? I remember holding him on my chest. And, I'm a 20-year-old man with another human being on my chest that is part of me, So that's an amazing memory I have with my son, And my daughter, she was always so full of life and just wanted to hug and squeeze all the time, with all kinds of attitude.
Yeah, they come with their own, don't they? None of them are alike.
Right, yeah.
Well, so tell me this. So, if you were to go back to 35-year-old Tadd, what advice would you give him?
Well, listen to the doctor. Because I remember I was working hard like I usually do, right? And I couldn't relax. I couldn't calm down, And this was, I didn't realize it was much of a problem until in my second marriage that I can't slow down. I can't, man. I never relax.
Just go.
I would go to, I would get on vacation and I would wipe out because I was so stressed all the time, but it was in my head. I was stressing me out, not necessarily outside, circumstances. But I remember going to the doctor and he said, well, I'd like to try you on a tranquilizer. And I thought, wait a minute. I'm tired and you want to give me a tranquilizer? But had I been more open to the idea, then that might have
Change the outcome.
changed something, you know? Because I know that when I did finally get diagnosed with anxiety, and they gave me that one little magic pill, it was a game changer.
Yeah.
It slowed me down long enough that I could work and I could function, you know? And, you know, say what you will about drugs or, you know, prescription drugs or anything else, but if I don't have those, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
And I can feel it, and I know it. And I've been doing it long enough to know that when I don't have them, the wheels are coming off any day.
Yeah. Well, you know, and if there's medication out there that can fix something or improve something, it's worth it to try.
Absolutely.
You know, because so many times we try, you know, we see this in prevention all the time. People not wanting to take a prescription. And so what do? Self-medicate, right? They're self-medicating because they know better than the doctor does. And so many times it's taken a total wrong route. And if we just let the medical professionals do their job.
They know what they're doing.
They do.
We think we know what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Ultimately, we know our bodies and how things react to it. But, you know, listen to your doctor.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Don't be the guy that says, and I have been, I don't want to take any medication. You know? I hate taking pills every stinking day. But if I don't, it's not working for me. You know, it's like, I take high blood pressure medication. Am I okay with that? Absolutely. Well, why wouldn't I be okay with you know, something to help me not feel so wound up?
Yeah.
You know, it's just that stigma behind the mental illness that gets people all squirrely.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I agree. So what advice would you give to somebody that might be having thoughts of ending it all? If somebody's in that place where whether it's a panic attack, anxiety, depression, mental illness, if they're in that spot and they're thinking, you know what, you know, hearing that voice that you heard that you need to die, what advice would you give them?
Stop. Take a deep breath and call somebody. You're not in this alone. You know, and that's when I was there, I was alone. There was no one else that could help me. You know, that's all I thought was it's me, and that's just not true. You know, reach out and let someone help you. And you don't even have to say, let them help me. You know, hey, how you doing? And I know that phone weighs like 412 pounds when you're desperate and need to call and don't want to because you think you're going to be a burden, or you think that you're going to bother them, or they're busy, or they'll think that you're weak. You know, that doesn't work that way, man. People are here for you, and let them help you, whether it's 911 or your buddy from school, you know. Those are the things that save lives. When a person, I believe, slows down long enough to say, I need some help. I gotta call somebody. Yeah. You know, ask for help.
No, I agree with you. I may have even mentioned it on here before, but I remember being a teenager, and when I'd get in a spot where, you know, I wasn't thinking clearly, I remember my old man would always tell me, sleep on it.
Yeah.
Things will look different tomorrow. Sleep on it and it'll look different tomorrow.
And they do. What
and
a great...
every time it's better after you've slept on it. You see more clearly. I think when we're in the middle of crisis and things are going wrong, our peripheral vision just gets narrower and narrower to where we're just focusing on the problem and we don't see any of the other things.
Right.
And that makes it worse. So, what would you have missed out on had you died that day in 1999?
I remember this woman, a psychiatrist, I believe, asked me when I came to, woke up from one of my operations, and she said, "Are you happy that you're alive, or sad that you're not dead?" And all I could do was grin, half a grin, but that's all I could do was grin. And I could take my kids fishing. That's what I remember, that I have a chance to take my kids fishing again. And I wouldn't have otherwise, I've missed out on enough of their life already. I don't want to miss out anymore. This hurt them deeply to think that their old man, didn't want to be with them anymore. And that's so not true. But I couldn't be with them, and then that in turn, their kids, That's what I would miss out on, more than anything else, See, nothing else matters when, when it comes to that, a sunset or a beautiful woman or the love of a dog or hunting or fishing or anything, that doesn't mean squat compared to being with my children, and because that's what I fight for every day, is to have that again, because I miss that.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that the world would not have been better without you. And I'm grateful that you're here. I'm grateful for our friendship. I'm grateful that we met. I'm grateful to know that I've got somebody that cares as much about the things I care about to come and sit with me tonight and kind of lay it out there. I know that a lot of your story goes beyond that day, and with addiction and your struggles there. If you were to give advice to somebody that's kind of traveling down a similar road, whether it's with alcohol or drugs or what have it, what would you advise them? What would you tell them?
That it's going to get worse. It always gets worse before it gets better with any type of addiction. This friend of mine is always saying, whatever it was that got you to the point that you wanted to go to a meeting, or seek help, will get worse when you leave. Because it does. It talks about a progressive illness. It always gets worse. If you got punched twice and that's what got you here, you're going to get your ass kicked before you come back. And unfortunately, we need to have that. You have to get desperate enough to want to change. And that's what it takes. So it's going to get worse. And if you want better, you have to do something different. If you like what you're getting, keep doing what you're doing. If you don't, do something different. And I pray that that person finds some sort of recovery, wherever that might be, whether it's AA or NA or CA or whatever A, or the LDS 12 step, or talking to your pastor, or whatever it is that can get you to where you don't want to get loaded anymore. That's what you have to find, and I pray that no one ever has to feel that way again. That's not feasible or logical, but I don't want anyone to have to feel that way.
So is life better in sobriety than it is.
Oh man, you know, I consider myself quite successful in my life pre horrible addiction. You know, so I went from, you know, married, 2 kids, car, truck, you know, house, to homeless. You know, when I moved from Salt Lake to Tooele, everything I owned was in a backpack. And it will only get worse. You know, anything that I want to have will go away the minute I get loaded. Yeah. And I've proved that over and over and over again. You know, no, it's not rosy. No, it's not zippity-doo-dah, you know, and rainbows and unicorns all day long. But life is life. And I can never get to where I want to go if I keep doing what got me miserable to begin with. You know, it just doesn't, it's not going to happen.
So is recovery possible?
Anything is possible in recovery.
Yeah.
And recovery is absolutely possible. Once you're willing, once I'm willing to change my thought process and change my heart to a better way, then yes. Doesn't matter where you've been or how miserable you are, there's always a tomorrow with recovery. There's not with dope.
Yeah.
That's just, you know, bottom line, there's not. You know, I can't have any of my dreams will never be fulfilled if I'm getting loaded. And that's just the way it is. Because I've proved it over and over and over again. You know, if I want good, I got to start doing good and thinking good and things like that. If I like misery, keep doing miserable things.
Yeah. Can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result.
No.
And that's really the basis of it. Well, you know, like I said, I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate you being willing to lay it out there tonight and share this, because there's so many people that listen to this podcast that I know your story can help. And so I want you to know that I look at you as a success story, because you're still here. And I could tell the first night that we met where your heart was. And your heart was to make a difference so nobody else went down that road.
Well, and I appreciate that, you know. And John, I appreciate what you're doing, or I wouldn't be here. You know, I want to be a part of something that can help change what a person thinks for a minute, if only for a minute. Yeah. You know, because that's as quick as it is. You know, and to think that, you know, a friend of mine told me years ago that he got to the point where he wanted to off himself. And he thought of me. And he didn't want to have to go through the shit I've been through if he didn't kill himself. Yeah. You know? And so even that roundabout way, someone has been affected by my story. And so that was pretty cool. You know, and this guy's a great guy. You know, we're still friends. And who knows, maybe had he not had that thought, he wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't think you know how many lives you've affected just by being you know what I mean? And we talked prior to the podcast tonight, and we talked about the fact that, you know, for somebody that's struggling with those thoughts and thinking that the world would be better off without them, your story is a protective factor to those people, because it's not as easy as you think it is. There's 25 attempts for every person that dies by suicide. So 25 people thought they could pull it off, and only one did.
Right.
And so, you know, I guess I would end the podcast tonight just by saying, listen, if you've listened to this podcast tonight, if you've heard Tadd's story, and you're thinking that the world would be better off without you, it's just simply not true. And if you're having thoughts that are scaring you, if you're hearing those voices that said that you need to die, reach out to somebody. Don't do this alone, like Tadd said. Reach out, call the Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255.
Great segue.
Yeah, really, that's really where it lies. Reach out. Isolation only makes things worse. If you're alone, and we're seeing that with COVID, it only makes things worse. Reach out to somebody that can actually help you, whether that's 911 or the Lifeline. Reach out. Tell somebody where you're at, because I think you'd be surprised, like Tadd, in a hospital room with 15 people.
Yeah.
And now you know how many people really were there for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you might have thought that you were all alone that day. But you had plenty of people that cared.
Right.
And so if you're in that spot, please reach out. And again, Tadd, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. I do want to talk about one thing real quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So obviously I use a gun, right? And there's a lot of tension about guns and, I hate to say it, gun control. The gun didn't do anything to me. It had nothing to do with the gun. I did that. A friend of mine asked me years ago, how can you be, a gun advocate after what happened to you? Well, the gun I used had nothing to do with it. I still shoot and love to shoot and love guns and want guns. But being responsible about that is a big deal. And that's another thing, man. If you have guns and you are ever thinking that you might want to do something with that gun, or you start to think that you have that thought, please call somebody and have them help you get those guns out of the place. I had to do that. I got to where the wheels came off and I was having a breakdown, and I called my friends, 2 of them, and they came in and took the gun away and took me to the hospital, And one of them cared about me so much. This guy was a felon, and if he gets anywhere near a gun, he's in prison.
Yeah.
So there are people that care and love you all the time. Reach out and let them help you.
Yeah, and I think you can even take them to the police department, and they'll hold them for you.
Really?
Yeah, so you can do that, and and I'm glad you brought that up, because I breezed right over it, and was so into your story I wasn't thinking about it. But if you have a gun, please make sure that you store them properly, store them safely, and I think there's a misconception that, hey, if I've got a gun safe, my guns are locked up and my guns are safe. The one thing that you have to be aware of, as I've gone into schools and talked to kids, there are so many people that, yeah, they've got a gun safe. And the kids know how to get into the gun safe.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure, I don't care if they're an 18-year-old, make sure that you keep that safe combination to yourself. And if you've got an 18-year-old that is able to use a gun on his own and stuff, make sure that you're still there to give access to it. There was a story, and I think I'll tell it real briefly, but there was a young man, and I heard this story a few years ago. He was going to a local high school here in Utah, and he had decided that it was his day. He just was not going to keep fighting the fight. He was going to end his life, and he had a plan in his head that he was going to go home, get into Dad's gun safe, and he was going to end his life. When he got home, he opened that gun safe and was home alone, had the privacy to do what he had planned to do. And he opened up that gun safe, and his father had got one of those free gun locks from the state of Utah. And the gun lock was through the pistol. And he searched every shelf looking for the key to that gun lock. And while he was looking and kind of scouring everything, trying to find that key, his cell phone rang, and it was a friend saying, hey, do you want to go to the mall? realizing he didn't know where that key was, he put the gun back, closed up the gun safe, and he went to the mall. He happened to tell one of our legislators here in Utah, he says, listen, I've never felt that way again. But had that gun lock not been on that pistol that day, I would have ended it.
Wow.
And so please know that if you're in need of a gun lock, reach out to me. We'll get you these gun locks. They're given by the state of Utah. They are free. But we've got to figure out a way. I mean, we live in the West, and we live in a place where hunting is a favorite pastime. Yeah, it's a favorite pastime. And it's okay. It's okay to own a gun. But like Tadd says, we've got to be responsible gun owners because we don't want those rights to ever be taken from us. We need to make sure that we're being responsible.
My kids grew up around guns and knew how to handle them and knew how to take care of them and knew how to be safe with them and know how to do all of that. And just like you said, John, it's such a big part of my world that I don't want to miss out on that. And I want ultimately to protect my kids from that. Yeah. Hurting themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear about all the time, Frank, little Frankie across the street shot Sam, not intentionally, but
just accidental.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you brought that up because that is something I did want to talk about on the podcast. So thank you for doing that. And again, we appreciate you coming back week after week. I know you don't come for me, you come for the guests. And I hope that the messages that you're hearing on this podcast are touching you in a way that you're getting information that's valuable to you. If this is a message tonight that you think somebody needs to hear, please share it. Go in and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. That helps us do what we do and keep this podcast being seen and heard. And like I said, share it with those that you think the message pertains to because we need to get this message to as many as possible. And again, we want to thank our sponsor, GTM Builders. If you're thinking about building a home, check them out online, gtmbuilders.com. If you're looking for a real estate agent thinking about buying or selling, check out A. Warner Homes Real Estate or reach out to them at 867-5078. I don't know why I always do that. I always get the numbers right at the beginning and then at the end. Yeah, I need it. I need a teleprompter. But reach out to them at 801-867-5078. If you've got some thoughts or comments about the podcast or want to tell us about a guest that maybe we should have on the podcast, reach out to us at 435-277-0235. And thanks again for being here for another week. Thanks, Tadd.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next week. Take care.